invested in the clusters I have referred to. The experiences of other countries indeed demonstrate the fact that research and development can be a key driver of innovation and technological change, which in turn leads to economic growth and enhanced productivity. In fact, it is commonly agreed that research and development has been at the center of the phenomenal economic development witnessed at the global level over the last 200 years. From the industrialization of continental Europe to the Silicon Valley ICT revolution in the USA, the emergence of the Asian tigers, and lately the rise of modern China, all point to the critical role of research in unleashing the development potential of nations. Madam Chair, surely as Zimbabweans, we cannot be the odd exception. I am indeed convinced that the future success of our country will depend on the ideas, knowledge, and talents of its people. It therefore behoves on us to strengthen our research and development capacity in order to grow and develop our economy. It has to be noted that by and large, our research and development thrust has not adequately addressed the key requirements of the country's development agenda. The major constraining factors in this regard include unavailability of funding and the tendency to view research as an end in itself, or as others say, the publish or perish syndrome, without regard to its effectiveness in addressing critical issues of human survival and development. This is further compounded by the tendency among researchers and research institutions to operate in relative isolation from one another, and thus failing to benefit from the synergies that go hand in hand with the collaborative approach to research and development. It is to be pointed that we have not moved far enough in the implementation of projects under the Zim asset, mainly due to limited capacity also in developing bankable projects. On our part as government, we recently found it necessary to invite experts from the National Development and Reform Commission of China to transfer skills on bankable projects to selected officials from the public and private sectors. I am sure if we were interacting effectively with yourselves, we might not have done such a thing. We could have relied on the capacities of our own local researchers. I hope this workshop will also need to address the challenge of the disconnect that often exists between researchers and the other players along the value chain. Indeed, we should establish collaborative networks between our research and tertiary institutions and the world of business in order to facilitate the adoption and the commercialization of research innovations. At a practical level, such collaborative networks should be anchored on the search for innovative and technological solutions that should ultimately render our economy more competitive at the global level. To avoid the fallacy of attempting to reinvent the wheel, we may also need to learn from other nations, which embarked on reverse engineering as a means of mastering the existing technologies and adapting them to our local conditions. As already alluded to, our research institutions ought to move from the culture of carrying out research for the sake of research. There is need to inculcate business ideals into the institutional research program. Even though the world over governments do fund research, the bulk of the research funds tend to come from the private sector. Naturally, the private sector is more inclined to fund research that is aligned to their line of business. It is also of importance for our researchers to be aligned to the pertinent needs of society, so that the use of public funds on such research program is justifiable. Let me now turn to the important subject on what our researchers should do in prioritizing the resolution of challenges pertaining to the clusters under the ZIM asset. I start with the National Food and Security Cluster, where I want to emphasize the need for research into better ways of enhancing agricultural productivity through the employment of advanced technologies and the development of climate change resilient food crop varieties. Furthermore, our scientific research institutions, as well as agricultural institutions, must continuously focus on increasing yields per hectare in the national strategic food crops through research into appropriate seed, for instance, varieties. Particular focus should be on the value addition of indigenous crops in order to improve their attractiveness to consumers. The notion that our traditional foods are for the poor is a misconception that should be effectively countered through the dissemination of research findings on the nutritional value of traditional foods. The development of indigenous crops should be better supported through the application of appropriate processing technologies and market support systems. Furthermore, we need to work towards the elimination of over-dependence on a few crops as sources of food and nutrition security. In this regard, research should be aimed at enhancing productivity in small grains, which have proved to be more resilient to the devastating effects of climate change. In addition, a crucial imperative within the agricultural research system is the dissemination of research results to farmers. This will enable farmers to make informed choices on the crop varieties and the farming methods to apply from time to time. The social services and poverty eradication and the infrastructure and utilities clusters also require substantial input from research and development. Firstly, the issue of sustainable environmental management is of importance both at macro and micro levels. In this regard, our researchers must gather and analyze information on the extent to which human activities impact on the environment and the possible remedies thereof. This will help the regulatory authorities to institute evidence-based policy interventions. We have also witnessed the increase in invasive species in some of our water bodies due to the effects of industrial pollution. There is thus need for research on how best to respond to this threat to our environment. One way is to look into the possible uses of the invasive species themselves. For instance, as feedstock for industrial production processes. Another area that must be prioritized under the social services and poverty eradication cluster is health research. All the objectives of the ZIM asset are hinged on the sustenance of a healthy nation. Priority should be accorded to research into drug development and public health management. There is also a need to increase the capacity to conduct research into the improvement of the national health delivery system. More importantly, it is necessary to urgently work on increasing the capacity to local manufacture medicines so as to lower over-dependence on imported medicines. Local universities should therefore aim at producing graduates with capabilities in drug development, bearing in mind the long-term national objective of developing a vibrant drug development industry. Universities and research institutions are also called upon to draw from international experiences and global best practices to ensure that local innovations are not divorced from the prevailing developments in the international markets. Indeed, the products and services that will emanate from such research and development stand a better chance of effectively competing on the global market. The sustained linkages between research and industry ensures the continuity of the culture of innovation. It is pleasing to note that in the education sector, in terms of the curriculum review exercise, emphasis is being placed on the learning of mathematics and science subjects. This will lay a firm basis for the development of critical thinking among our young students, which is an important prerequisite for objective analysis and problem solving. That is the way to go if we are to adequately empower our citizens to be value creators. As researchers, it is our role to drive this transformative agenda forward. In the energy sector, which is a key enabler of the industrialization process, I need to mention that research and development plays a critical role. Of critical importance is the need to build the local capacity for development of renewable energy sources to supplement traditional sources of energy. A deliberate funding program for renewable energy research in Zimbabwe will go a long way in alleviating some of the energy woes that have affected both industry and the domestic consumers alike. We have had some preliminary work on the biodiesel production project in the past. However, there is need for further research to establish the appropriate models for the industrial production of biofuels. It should be noted that the agricultural, mining, and manufacturing sectors are the prime targets under the value addition and the beneficiation cluster of ZIM asset. The idea is to move up the value chain to the production of secondary and tertiary products, which command greater returns and promote greater economic integration and employment generation. Research in this regard could be focused on the search for appropriate product innovations and the technologies that enhance production efficiency. Work has already begun to take shape in the diamond industry through the setting up of the Diamond Technology Center. In the process of generating knowledge, the outputs may take the form of novel discoveries, new products, or improved versions of existing products. Most outputs are valuable information from which the originators or inventors will definitely expect to benefit. There is therefore need for the inventors of these innovations to be aware of the value of their intellectual property. A deliberate effort to strengthen national capacity to manage intellectual property generated within the country is therefore a matter of urgent priority. It is therefore important to develop within the country a system for ensuring that the understanding of intellectual property is prioritized and all the innovators in the country are at least aware of their basic intellectual property rights. This ensures that the knowledge generated within the country's borders benefits the generators of that knowledge. I am pleased with the efforts of the Research Council in ensuring that our country is not left behind in terms of global developments in the field of research. Participants at this workshop may need to know that following the recommendations by the Research Council, Zimbabwe is now a member of the Group on Earth Observation. The Group on Earth Observation aims, among other things, to facilitate the sharing of Earth observation data for informed decision-making and research. I therefore want to encourage the Research Council of Zimbabwe to continue interacting with similar institutions across the globe for the benefit of the national research community. I also wish to commend the Research Council for having successfully organized annual editions of the Zimbabwe International Research Symposium for the past 10 years, despite the harsh economic difficulties in our country. The symposium promotes research through affording researchers, particularly our young researchers, an opportunity to interact with their peers, research funders, and the users of research results. Furthermore, the Office of the President Cabinet is especially grateful to the Research Council of Zimbabwe for honoring the legacy of the head of state and government through the Robert Gabriel Mugabe Award for outstanding research. I am also grateful for all the corporates that have continued to support the Research Council in offering due recognition to outstanding individuals in the field of research. The Research Council